Yo, who the f is MattCMG?
Hey paisanos, it's me, MattCMG, and today we've got another epic niche nostalgia topic for you. Whoa! Getting a little nostalgic? You know what I'm talking about? You know, we live in an age where we have all kinds of new media coming out every single day alongside every other thing that came out before that point. You know, if there's a movie from the 1970s you wanted to watch, you can do that relatively easily, if you have to do it illegally, and you can do that right next to watching the newest hit releases. However, even though we have access to all of this old stuff, a lot of that old stuff also exists in a vacuum in the sense that the culture surrounding them is usually a product of the time and cannot always be preserved the same way the media itself can. Sometimes to truly appreciate something, you just had to be there. And today we'll be talking about just that. Today we'll be looking at a few examples of pieces of media that, though they still exist and can be enjoyed today, were best enjoyed during a very specific time. So smash that motherfucking like button, or I'll make sure that you're there for the end of your days! And let's get right into some cultural phenomena. Anemone. Anemone. I'm Eminem and I got an anemone and I'm rapping about all these amenities in my hotel room when I got a Benadryl and a man's dick and a penis pill. Yeah, that's fire. To start us off, when it comes to the greats of Western animation, Gravity Falls is typically a part of that conversation. Created by Alex Hirsch and released by Disney Channel in 2012, Gravity Falls follows the adventures of Dipper and Mabel Pines, two twins who are sent away for the summer to the titular town of Gravity Falls, where the weird and unexplained are a daily occurrence. While mostly episodic in nature, the show also had an ongoing storyline filled to the brim with mysteries and secrets. There wasn't really much like it at the time, so of course, the show fostered a massive fan community online. Obviously, while it is very common for fan communities to try and predict what's going to happen next, Gravity Falls was a bit more complicated than that, because the show's creators and the team behind it directly fed into the fan base by giving them hints and red herrings all throughout the show's run. Seemingly every frame of the show had some kind of hidden message or cryptogram that hints at the deeper lore of the series, which kept fans coming back every week to see if their theories would be confirmed or not. There were entire YouTube channels dedicated to decoding the secrets of Gravity Falls and presenting theories about how it's all gonna end. Like Villiscabum, who now just reads Twitter headlines. Complete shade, absolute worst fall off in YouTube history, not kidding. One of the worst channels on the website, straight up. For example, at the end of the show's opening sequence, a cipher would flash for one frame that, when decoded, reads, "Stan is not what he seems," referring to Grunkle Stan and a major plot twist down the line. The end credits of each episode also featured ciphers that were a little bit more obvious to find, but they were mostly just little jokes and gaffes about the content of the episode. Around season 2 is when they started including these ciphers within the episodes themselves, many of which containing foreshadowing for things the fan base had been theorizing for years, such as the authors of the journals or what these symbols mean and how they all relate to Bill's cipher. This is a large part of what made the show so appealing during its run, because everybody had theories and shit like that, but because of the show's weird schedule, you'd sometimes have to wait a month or even longer to see if your theory would be correct. It was a show that fostered being inquisitive and creative, and the conspiracies blended the line between the show and reality in a weird way. You were ultimately discovering the secrets at the same time that the characters were, but you had more context than the characters did, so you were able to go a little bit deeper. It was arguably more engaging to play along than it was to watch the show itself. My point here is that, yeah, you can totally watch Gravity Falls today in current year and still have a great time with it, but to truly appreciate it, you just kinda needed to be there when it was still airing. Seeing all of the insane fan theories was the whole appeal when it was first airing, and you just can't really get that now that the show is over and everybody knows all the lore. The very nature of the show lent itself to being something to be discussed week to week, and it just doesn't hit the same if you binge watch it. This also applies to pretty much every TV show that was released before streaming was a thing, albeit to a much lesser degree, since I think Gravity Falls is kind of the best example. Like I talked about in my cable video, the nature of TV before streaming was much more centered on building up each episode as an event that you can't miss. So for a lot of shows, the branding of the networks and the way they were promoted were just as much a part of the experience as the show itself was. Like, did you really watch Total Drama Island if you binge watched it and then didn't have to watch the promos for the new episode every single fucking commercial break? And to be fair, while a lot of that stuff obviously worked on us as kids because we were stupid and didn't know any better, there are also adult shows that had this kind of same you had to be there vibe. Critically acclaimed shows like Breaking Bad, The Sopranos, and even Seinfeld had their finales hyped up like crazy to the point where people remember exactly where they were when they aired. These shows were cultural phenomena in their own right because they were the shows that were so good that they had the entire population wrapped around their finger. These shows were the culture at their respective times, and we don't really get that vibe nowadays, even with shows that are incredibly popular. The whole idea of a cultural phenomena show where you knew that everybody else was watching it with you at the exact same time isn't really a thing anymore, due in large part to how cynical the internet has made everybody. I genuinely cannot think of what the last cultural phenomena show really was. Like, maybe it was Succession, but like even then, it just kind of doesn't have the same vibe because it wasn't like, you know, being aired at a specific time or anything like that. People were just watching it whenever they had the time. I don't know. It's a vibe we don't really get no more, you know what I'm saying? The closest thing I can think to it are live events like, you know, award shows and sporting events and stuff like that. That's kind of the only real time you get this, but like you don't really get it with shows anymore. I don't know. Maybe I'm just a goober. I'm a gay goober. The gay goober back at it again with the white balls. All right. Damn, Daniel, back at it again with the hawk too. Moving on. Pokemon! It wouldn't be a MattCMG video if I didn't force Pokemon into this somehow. While today, Pokemon is obviously one of the most popular and easily recognized properties in the entire world, its popularity has always come and gone. With every new generation reveal, there's a whole hype cycle leading up to the game's release, followed by immediate disappointment because the games haven't been good in 10 plus years. But that's just today, because back in the late 90s and early 2000s, there was a little thing called Pokemania. You might have heard of it. While this is definitely way before my time, I don't think I was even conceived by this point. Anybody who lived through Pokemania can tell you just how pervasive it really was. Every kid had the games and watched the anime. The trading cards were all over the place to the point where schools had to ban them. There were all kinds of toys in all kinds of shapes and forms. It was on the cover of Time magazine. There were conventions, a stage play, live concerts, Pokemon the t-shirt, Pokemon the coloring book, Pokemon the lunchbox, Pokemon the breakfast cereal, Pokemon the flamethrower! It was fucking everywhere and you could not escape it. But by the time of Ruby and Sapphire's release, Pokemania had already peaked and was out the door, and though the series would remain popular, it would never reach those heights again. That is, until 2016 with the release of Pokemon Go. I play Pokemon Go every day. I play Pokemon Go. Now, unlike Pokemania, this was something that I was actually around for. If you were somehow not sentient in 2016, well, first of all, why are you watching this video? Go suck your binky, you little fucking bitch. But if you weren't around in 2016 for whatever reason, then you will never truly know the insanity of the Pokemon Go summer. It's commonly joked about that the summer of 2016 was the closest that we had ever gotten to world peace, but I honestly think that there's a little bit of truth to that, because Pokemon Go was somehow able to unite people in a way that nothing else has before or since. And this was in an election year, mind you.
Vagina.
No matter who you talk to, you could easily strike up a conversation because everybody was out there catching Pokemon creatures. Honestly, it low-key felt like Pokemon were real for a little while. Back when I had friends, we had a small group that would go around town trying to catch them all, and it led me to places in my town that I never even knew about. It was a pretty goated summer, I gotta say. However, there were also a few dark sides to this second wave of Pokemania, as the nature of Pokemon Go had a few unintended consequences. So many people were trying to play the game at once that it was a gamble if you could even connect to the servers. There were videos of people forming hordes and trampling each other because there was a rare Pokemon nearby. The casual nature of the game also led the main series games to be more casual, which is probably a downside depending on who you ask, as well as numerous cases of criminals using the game to lure people in and do all kinds of nefarious acts. And worst of all, Pokemon go to the polls. It was a crazy time. While Pokemon Go is obviously still around today and is actually better than ever now because of all the new features they've been adding over the years, it will never be as culturally relevant as it was in the summer of 2016. And speaking of 2016, this is also often said to be one of the best years for YouTube. And as somebody who was around for it, I'd say I'm pretty fond of it. Question mark? Of course, you had the likes of Filthy Frank rising to fame this year, H3H3 was in his prime, Fantano was still doing meme review, and this was all at a time before the, and I absolutely hate this term, adpocalypse where you could get away with pretty much anything. But the thing that stands out the most about the 2016 era of YouTube were the rise of commentary channels and the various beefs between them, the ramifications of which we are still feeling to this very day. While it's certainly not everybody's cup of tea, this was an undoubtedly iconic era if you were the right demographic for it. Of course, you had Leafy, a guy whose videos were pretty shitty all things considered, but his frequent cyberbullying served as the catalyst for many a YouTube drama. There was his feud with Keemstar, an equally shitty person who was clearly just stoking the flames for views. You had Grade A Under A injecting himself into all sorts of these situations, and you had Rice Gum who was completely unable to see any of the irony.
Irrelevant!
This was also the era of iDubbbz and his series Content Cop, which was the pinnacle of the commentary genre at the time. Whenever a new Content Cop episode dropped, it was like an event for the YouTube community. It was the type of thing where you dropped everything to go and watch it. Now obviously, the 2016 era of YouTube has been heavily criticized in recent years for various reasons, and you know what? Fair enough. Wasn't exactly the most politically correct climate out there, I get it. I'm not saying it was the greatest era of all time or anything. What I am saying is that it was an era you just had to be there for to truly understand why anybody would like it, if that makes any sense. This obviously isn't exclusive to just 2016. This also applies to pretty much any era of the site for that matter, as I discussed in a previous video. Crack my back, you wanna get some back cracks on the mic? Hey yo, I'm back crack on the mic. Hey yo! Shifting back into video games, there are plenty that I could think of that had their time in the limelight, but are nowhere near as big as they were during their peak. For example, I remember when Overwatch came out and everybody was on that shit. It was the hottest game around, right? But fast forward a few years and Blizzard axed the single player story mode that they promised since launch, and eventually discontinued the original game that people paid money for in favor of a sequel that was basically just a glorified update to the original game. Overwatch still exists, but there is absolutely no way that it will ever be able to return to its golden age, and is seemingly only remembered for having extremely fuckable characters. Shout out 2Mad, RIP 2Mad. He died doing what he loved, playing the worst fucking game of all time. Similarly, MMOs, by their very nature as live service games, are things where you mostly do need to be there at a specific time to fully enjoy them. Many of these types of games get discontinued after a while, and while games like World of Warcraft or RuneScape still exist, they are nowhere near as big as they were at their peaks, and even if they were, many of the time-sensitive events are no longer being held. Granted, I think old school RuneScape still does shit like this, but you could pretty much apply this to any long-running multiplayer game. Like, even Fortnite has stuff like this, where if you want a specific item or specific skin, you have to play at a very specific time. Limited time events are kind of cringe and gay in terms of like preservation and shit like that, but their limited nature of them makes them feel more special than they really are. Yeah, I don't know. Modern gaming sucks balls is my point. I don't know. But then you have midnight releases, which seemingly transcended gaming. Back in the day before digital downloads or pre-ordering online or any of that shit was the norm, the only way to play new games was by buying the physical disc. Many game stores like GameStop or EB Games or whatever would have these games in stock prior to the release date, leading people to line up in droves to be there at midnight to be the first to experience the next installment of their favorite series. This was the case for a lot of different games. There were definitely ones for Pokémon, a lot of shooters like Call of Duty and the like, but the ones that stick out in my mind were the midnight releases for the Halo games. I was way too young for these back in the day, and I never really experienced Halo until way later in life, but I've seen countless videos of these where they seemed like they were a good fucking vibe. Camping outside of a GameStop with your boys, eating some za and sipping on some non-alcoholic brewskis, and then going home and having a Halo LAN party all night long sounds fucking immaculate. I guess you could still do that technically today in 2024, but I'm gay. But if you ask me, the biggest you had to be there moment in video game history is none other than Flappy Bird. You were probably expecting something else, but I'm not kidding. For those who are unaware, in 2013, Flappy Bird was released to the App Store, and at a time where smartphones were becoming incredibly massive, it took the world by storm. The game was extremely simple. You tap to make the little bird guy go up, and you gotta maneuver through the Mario pipes until you die. Pretty simple. When this game came out, every person that I knew was playing it. Everybody's out there comparing high scores, and we're seemingly all addicted to this game. I legitimately don't think it can be understated how pervasive it truly was. But after only a month of this popularity, the game's creator, Dong the Win, removed the game from the App Store, claiming that he hated the way everybody was so addicted to it and that it was ruining his life. Oh no, I'm a multi-millionaire by making the fucking simplest game of all time. Boo-hoo, woe is me, my life is ruined. What are you, fucking gay? After the game's removal, kids went even crazier for Flappy Bird. If you had the game on your iPhone or your iPod Touch or whatever, it was considered a hot commodity. And if you didn't have the game, you were fiending for a way to play it. People were selling phones with Flappy Bird installed on them for exorbitant prices on eBay. And any Flappy Bird clones that came out in the App Store were quickly removed for being too similar to the original, meaning that there weren't really any alternatives. It was complete and utter chaos in this early smartphone era. While nowadays Flappy Bird is readily available in various forms, early 2014, when the game blew up and was subsequently removed, was an insane time if you were a kid. Whoa guys, it's me, Flappy Bird. I'm going Flappy mode. Welcome to Matt Flappy Bird, the new hit video game all the kids are playing and they're jerking their little peckers off to. I'm gay. But those have been some cultural phenomena. The stuff where you just had to be there, that I happened to be there for. Well, most of it. I was there for a lot of it. Not some of it I wasn't there for, but you get the vibe. If I may get personal for a second, this video kind of spawned from some shit I've been dealing with lately. Don't worry, I'm not gonna like trauma dump on you. I'm not that gay, right? So, you know, I've been thinking a lot lately about how quickly life seems to move, and that there's a lot of shit that just won't last forever. You know, I'm 24 right now, and sometimes it feels like my life hasn't changed at all in the past 5 years, and I've seemingly missed out on a lot of things that people my age are currently doing. No, it's go to work, go home, work more on making YouTube videos, eat, shit and or beat off, go to sleep, rinse and repeat. You know, a lot of people my age are out there hanging with friends, dating, making memories that'll last lifetimes. You know, really starting their lives, you know what I mean? And the more I sit here as a complete workaholic, the more I realize that I should probably start doing that too.
Because I personally am a workaholic. For many years, I was helplessly addicted to workahol.
If there's anything I've learned from doing these goofy nostalgia videos about how much better shit was back in my day, is that it's really hard to be nostalgic when you're constantly living in the past. Like, sure, it's great that we have the ability to preserve all this media in all these different shapes and forms, but what good is any of that if you aren't living in the moment and actually enjoying it? You know what I mean? I don't know. Moral of the story: live your life, as Rihanna once said. So live your life. Hey, I'm gay, and I like to suck a man's penis, so live your life. But that is all for this video. Let me know in the comments what your favorite you had to be there memories are in terms of, like, you know, media and shit like that. You know, like, comment, subscribe, Patreon, all that shit. I've been MattCMG, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.
Imagination is for turbo nerds who can't handle how kick-butt reality is.
Outweigh the treats.
Brakes, brakes, brakes!
Celebrate Monstober. Knock, knock.
This cackling head's the voice of a generation.
With an all-new Gravity Falls. Next Friday at 9, 8 Central. Part of Monstober Night of Premieres on Disney Channel.
Let's get some pussy tonight.